Well, thanks so much. Great panel, and it's good to see so many friends standing up in such a courageous way. You know, when I joined Mark to greet our legislative team on your DC arrival last Monday, I was so pleased to be welcomed with cries of "Killer Bee, Killer Bee." There are some parallels between our walkout long ago and the powerful sting that you have been delivering. We were both relying on a last resort tactic when everything else failed to try to stop a bad election bill. We senators had considerable debate among ourselves about whether to employ what was a near unprecedented tactic. We finally agreed that we would walk out for a few hours on one day and that would achieve all of our objectives. Instead, we were met with immediate defiance. Our colleagues were on the Senate floor calling us irresponsible, shiftless, unwilling to fulfill our constitutional responsibility, and some were actually insisting that we be brought back in chains. A few hours turned into a few days in what was a cramped one-room, one-bath apartment created from what had been a two-car garage. I know that you face some challenges here this week, but I can tell you that it's no piece of cake to be cooped up in one room with Babe Schwartz nonstop talking and Oscar Mosey's intensive snoring. At least it was not as awful as COVID. And we continually debated throughout whether it was time to go back. We could afford to lose just 2 members. We had the police, the DPS, the Texas Rangers, and everyone else searching for us. My family was never better protected than at that time because there was always a car and they were under surveillance. Didn't know where I was, even though I was only really a few blocks away. One of our members went to Oklahoma with his girlfriend, and we were very uncertain whether he would stay there. Another became so claustrophobic, as you probably heard, that he got up and left, did what probably all of us wanted to do, get out of the garage. We were soon alarmed with reports that he'd been arrested, only to be overjoyed to learn that they arrested the wrong man. But the differences are very significant also. We had big debates among 12 people. You have, I'm sure, disagreement and second guessing when you're coming to more than 50. We had the significant leverage of approaching the last week of the session with considerable interest, as you know there always is, in approving many bills and a desire to avoid a special session. And most significantly, we had a presiding officer who wasn't a right-wing ideologue, but someone who simply made a political mistake and realized it and corrected. Hence, we won on a bill and stopped it, while the victory is that I think has to be measured for what you're accomplishing, has to be measured by a different standard. As I said at the Capitol press conference we did together the other day, I think it's unlikely we ever change what happens in a meaningful way in Austin. But we still have the chance of making a change here in Washington. And most notably, whatever the result in Washington and Austin, whatever the barriers that may be erected in focusing a national spotlight on this and in rallying the same kind of groups that you've seen on the panel you just had to get out and get voter turnout, we have the potential to overcome any barriers that we cannot defeat in the courts or legislatively. I think you came to Washington to show the world that our democracy is worth the fight. This is not a struggle for Democrats' voting rights. It's a fight for everybody's right to register, vote, and have their vote fairly counted. When all of us can easily register and vote, democracy wins, and whether our party wins or loses, we all win when democracy wins. I think it's not just the eyes of Texas that have been upon you. It is not just our nation that's watching what's happening, but it's autocrats and dictators around the world. You came to a very scarred capital. We recognize how close we came to losing our democracy. As you turn to today's headlines, turn the headlines that we've got today into tomorrow's headway, I think we just have to keep struggling, not because we are confident that we're going to win, but because the loss of democracy is unthinkable. And the same fact-based approach that we bring to this struggle for democracy is the same tactic that we need to defeat COVID and ensure that more people here and elsewhere get vaccinated. It's the same science-based tactic we will use to combat global warming and the existential threat that it represents. It's the concern that truth will eventually defeat the lies that cost so many lives of today's unhinged Republicans. The Capitol, that is such a symbol of our democracy, really the beating heart of our democracy, was violated. Together, we have the chance to resuscitate and build on that terrible event, along with what's being done here with what's being done in Texas and Georgia and Florida on voting rights. You no doubt noted that our top general, the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Mark Milley, bluntly described the parallel between what's been happening here and fascism. I always think that when anyone on any side of an argument cites the Nazis, that they lose because there's nothing like the Nazis. But indeed, the fact that our own Joint Chiefs of Staff chair, no doubt a Republican among the many officers there at the top of the Pentagon, was so concerned that we were headed toward brown shirts and fascism by what Trump was doing. We could be on that path again if we are not able to sustain progress a year from now in these elections. So I think we need to speak more to just those who already understand what is at stake, and that no doubt, as you're doing now from here and what you can do when you're home, is to try to spread this message far and wide about what has happened, what the attempt to take away rights that apply to all, and try to engage more people to overcome any new barriers that are created. I am encouraged by the comments that a number of editorial writers have made. The suggestion in the San Antonio Express News that you were really continuing the march across the Selma Bridge, whether you're able to do it physically or not. This is the great civil rights battle of our day. We need not look to Belarus or Burma to see the tenacity that is required to stop dictatorship, but only to reflect on the civil rights struggle and the sacrifices that were made then, to know that what you're doing is worth the effort. So thank you for your courage. We want to continue supporting you in whatever decisions you make, not to tell you what to do, but to listen to what you think is the best course forward for us in Texas. I know you're about to hear from another Texas hero, my former colleague and always ally, Beto. But I will just say in closing, let's never give up and never give in, and find some path to victory. Thanks so much for all that you're doing.